What's going on, guys? It's Alex Miner here again for another AFMMA analysis. It's Saturday, September 29th. Tonight is Bellator 206. I usually don't cover Bellator events because they're not quite as easy to catch on TV, not quite as mainstream yet. The level of talent isn't quite the same as the UFC. However, it is growing, especially in the welterweight division. Um, but I wanted to cover tonight because it's a really big card. At the top, we have Gegard Mousasi versus Rory McDonald for the middleweight championship. Um, in the second fight, we have Rampage Jackson versus Wanderlai Silva for the fourth time. And then we have Diego Lima versus Andrey Koreshkov in the third fight, which is a rubber match as well. Third time they fought. So it's a pretty exciting night of fights for Bellator. Um, First, I wanted to start with Andrey Koreshkov versus Douglas Lima. Two very good strikers. Douglas Lima is known very well for just being this plodding, powerful Muay Thai-based tank. He just keeps a really high guard at all times and just gets off brutal leg kicks. Has some of the hardest leg kicks in the world when it comes to MMA. He also has a very powerful right hand. Not much of a jabber. He mainly throws out that right hand because he's a very powerful guy. He has a lot of powerful in both his hands and his kicks. He only really needs to land one, and therefore he just kind of just pushes towards guys and tries to land one on the chin. And if he catches you, he puts you out. He's done it to guys like Lawrence Larkin and many more. Andrey Koreshkov, on the other hand, like I said, very good striker, more boxing based. However, he has very good kicks as well. He kind of has this like windmill kind of style where he's constantly throwing punches, even like going sideways, throwing hooks, and then throwing uppercuts at the end of the combination. But he also has these spinning kicks to the body and spinning heel kicks to the head that are very effective for him as well. And he's very fast with both techniques, his hands and his kicks. So, and he uses his hands. He like feints a lot to set up his shots as well. So he's a lot more of a technical approach. Basically likes to set up guys, lead them into his shots. Just a much more of a pressure kind of fighter. Like I said, these men have fought each other before. In the first fight, they were fighting for the belt. Diego Lima was holding it at the time, and Andrey Koreshkov, he used everything in his toolbox. He used a lot of wrestling, and Diego Lima didn't really have much of a response. He was constantly getting taken down, and Koreshkov was just beating him from the top, and he got the nod that night. He took the belt from Diego Lima. In their second fight with one another, Andrey Koreshkov was doing very well once again. In the first round, it was kind of even. It's kind of a feeling out process. Diego Lima was getting off some good leg kicks. Koreshkov was trying to find range with his hands. However, in the second round, Koreshkov came out landing a lot more, throwing a lot more volume. He got a takedown. Got in some good ground and pound. Even when Diego Lima got up towards the end of the round, he cornered him and was basically just teeing off on him, landing hooks from outside of his range, while Diego Lima was just shelling up basically. However, in the second round, the same thing happened. Andrey Koreshkov backed Diego Lima down with his high volume punching style, and it looked like he was doing very well. He was connecting a lot, landing the hooks to the head. Diego Lima was just shelled up. However, he left his chin open for 1 second, trying to go for a rear uppercut, I believe, and as soon as he did so, Diego Lima just threw out a big left hook, and he just dropped Koreshkov, knocked him out, won his belt back. In this third fight, I feel like it may be very similar to the second bout and the first bout. Even Lima said himself that he feels like Andrey Koreshkov is going to come out and basically use his wrestling because that is where Lima is weakest. Lima improved from their first fight. You saw in the second fight that he was much more capable of getting off of his back using his hooks, his sweeps. However, I feel like Koreshkov is going to find a way to work around that. He's definitely going to use a lot of pressure. Although he is a very good striker as well, you just don't want to give Lima too many chances to land a big bomb on you. So the best route would be to pressure him with wrestling, punch your way in, and level change to a takedown. Or even if you can't get a takedown, just press him up against the fence and get some shots off. Lima is going to do what he always does. He's going to plod forward, trying to land big right hands and leg kicks. Basically, it's going to be a matter of Koreshkov playing it safe. If he can just shut Lima's offense down with a lot of volume and takedowns, then he's going to win this bout. However, if he gets greedy like he did in the second fight, when he gets him in a bad place, Lima can always land a big shot. In my opinion, I feel like it's good odds for Koreshkov if he does manage to stay defensive while being offensive throughout the fight. However, if he ever slips up or if he lets Lima get off too many leg kicks and slow him down, it may be another knockout for Lima. So we'll see. It's a very interesting bout. In the second fight of the main card, we have Rampage Jackson versus Wanderlai Silva 4. This is a big fourth go-about between two legends of the game. Wanderlai Silva, everybody knows, the axe murderer, always has been a very aggressive, throws caution to the wind kind of Muay Thai striker that just doesn't care how much he gets hit because he's going to try to outland you, and he has plenty of power. Rampage, on the other hand, was always been known for being more of a boxing and wrestler type. Back in Pride days, he used more of his wrestling, picking up guys and just slamming the hell out of them. I believe he was actually one of the first guys to knock a guy out by power bombing him to the ground on top of his head. He's very well known for that. Also, his boxing, his hands are just very lethal. Like, he has a lot of power in his hands, and people were very wary of that in the UFC as well, because if he touched you one time, he could put you to sleep. Although, after a while, he eventually was limited by his kind of dualistic style of only wrestling or only boxing. He didn't really have a kicking game, and guys who did were able to basically stay on the outside and, pick his legs apart, or guys who were able to push past his good takedown defense were able to get off some good offense on him as well, like Rashad Evans. Regardless, they have a very fiery history between one another. The first time they met each other was back in 2004, I believe. They met in Pride. Basically, whenever the fight started, Rampage was using a lot of wrestling, picking Wanderlai up. Wanderlai almost sunk in a guillotine, but Rampage got out of it. He got onto the ground, was landing knees from the top. However, eventually they got back up. Wanderlai just started putting this tie clinch on Rampage and just slamming him with knees, and Rampage just didn't seem to know how to deal with it. And after a while, about 6.5 minutes into the first round, finally those knees just made it so Rampage's chin gave way, and Wanderlai Silva got the TKO because Rampage had nothing left. In the second match, very back and forth at first. Rampage was landing some good shots, using that using that slick head movement in high guard that he has, and was landing back with some hard straights. Wanderlai Silva getting in some good hooks of his own. But eventually, again, Wanderlai Silva jumped in with a flying knee while Rampage was against the ropes and knocked Rampage out cold. Actually, no, I think it was Wanderlai Silva was against the ropes and knocked out Rampage. As he was coming in, and he just fell like a board against the ropes. He was out of there. In the third fight, it was Rampage who finally got revenge. Silva was throwing the wild hooks like he always does, and Rampage basically just threw up a few guards, threw up a few blocks, and as soon as Wanderlai stopped throwing, he just landed this beautiful left hook to the chin, and it flatlined Wanderlai Silva. I believe that was back in 2008, so in UFC. So now we're here 10 years later. Not sure how much older Wanderlai Silva is than Rampage, or if he is older at all, but I know seeing them next to each other at the weigh-ins, Wanderlai looks much older than Rampage does. Rampage is also much bigger as well. I believe they're fighting at 205, whereas they used to fight at middleweight, and it's mainly because Rampage just didn't want to cut weight anymore because he's a big guy naturally. He always hated cutting weight in the past, and he's just a really big 205er now. Or no, sorry, they both used to fight at 205, and now they're fighting at heavyweight, I believe. But yeah, Rampage is just humongous now, whereas Wanderlai Silva, kind of around the same size. He's just lost a lot of muscle mass. Hasn't been fighting as much as Rampage has recently. So I think it's definitely going to be another win for Rampage, just because his athleticism has basically stood the test of time better than Wanderlai. He's going to be much bigger, so power is going to be on his side, and I just don't know how much of Wanderlai's aggressive athletic attack is going to be intact within his performance at this point. So I'm calling a knockout for Rampage Jackson. At the top of the card, we have Rory McDonald, who is the welterweight champion over in Bellator, going up to middleweight to fight Gegard Mousasi, who is the middleweight champion. Very interesting fight. I always wondered, even back when these two were in the UFC, if they ever fought each other, who might win, because they are very similar to each other, in my opinion. They are two of the most well-rounded fighters I've ever seen in the UFC. Rory McDonald, there's just no real holes in his game. He's really good at staying long with his punches, very technical with his boxing, has some very good kicks as well, very good wrestling, very good pressure. He's a very good pressure fighter, and very slick submissions as well. The same goes for Gegard Mousasi. Gegard is a very technical boxer, very good kickboxer. I believe he has a dream belt and maybe another belt or so from kickboxing organizations, because he used to be a professional kickboxer. But he also has very good wrestling when he needs to use it, and very good submissions as well. The only main difference between these two is that Rory McDonald kind of came up, he's one of the first guys that came up with a strictly MMA training regimen, so he never really trained in a traditional martial art to get stuck in some of the habits that a traditional martial art might have that might be detrimental to fighting in MMA. And Gegard Mousasi, on the other hand, started fighting more in kickboxing, and you can just tell from his game that he's more of a traditional kind of fighter. However, he's managed to meld the kickboxing, boxing, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu together so well that it doesn't really matter. He doesn't really have too many weaknesses either. Um, in my opinion, I believe Gegard may have the advantage for one because he's the bigger guy. He's the more powerful guy. Um, and they're both around the same fight IQ. Maybe a little more. No, I'd say they're both around the same fighting IQ. But like I said, power's on Gegard's side. And Rory, the only thing with him is that his aggression wasn't always there when it needed to be. He's a very technical fighter, which is very good. You don't want to get too aggressive whenever you're fighting, but whenever you do have a guy hurt, you do want to know how to put on that killer instinct. However, he is good at finishing guys when he needs to, but he's not always as assertive as he could be. Gegard, he's kind of the same way at times as well, but I feel like he has a better killer instinct than Rory McDonald does. So, seeing as they both are kind of at the same level at IQ, but Gegard is just a little more, I say just a little more skilled in certain areas. It's because of that. The main thing with the traditional martial arts is you do actually get stronger in certain areas of offense. It's just that you don't want certain habits to hurt you where MMA transitions come in, such as a jiu-jitsu guy who's so used to playing on bottom but doesn't realize that once he gets in there in the MMA gym or in the MMA cage that he's going to get blasted with punches and elbows if he just sits in somebody's guard and doesn't get good at sweeping guys or throwing up quick submissions. Like I said, Gegard doesn't really have those issues, but he has all the strengths of a guy who was trained for a long time in traditional martial arts like kickboxing and boxing. So that coupled with his athletic superiority, I think that Gegard is probably going to take this bout and is going to remain the middleweight champion and then eventually fight Lyoto. But you never know. Like I said, both of these guys are just very good at winning. Both guys are very technical. They're very intelligent. So it could go either way. But yeah, just tune in for Bellator 206 tonight. I believe it's only streaming on DAZN, which is the streaming organization that they go through, or streaming app that they go through. I'll see if I can watch it. I just downloaded DAZN last night. I'm not sure how they do those Bellator events, whether if you still have to pay for them, if it's just a part of the package. I have no idea. Either way, I will be posting the results at some point or another. So look out for those on Twitter. And I'll catch you guys later. Have a good one.